Hello everyone. It is the second day of the Global Cultural Jamboree, and I hope you all are having a great time at this virtual jamboree. We welcome you all to the first episode of the CatchUp at GCJ today. So we are here with two of the key personalities of the World Organization of Scout Movement. So let's see who will be joining you. Mr. Craig Turpie, the Chairperson of the World Scout Committee, Mr. David Berg, the Chief Operating Officer of World Scout Bureau. Good morning to both of you. And I invite all the youth participants joining us today via YouTube to put on your questions onto the chat, and we are ready to answer them. So Craig, my first question is for you. As the Chairperson of the World Scout Committee, your voyage in the scouting so far would be a wonderful one. Can you share some key milestones with us? And I'm sure that will inspire our youth present here today.
Thank you so much. It's so great to be here, and what a great question. I think like many people involved in leadership roles in the World Organization of the Scout Movement, I've been involved over many years, starting out as a Cub Scout, a Scout, and then a Venture Scout, similar to Rover Scouts, and progressed through the Scout program. And as a young adult, had the opportunity to get involved in some international activities that really opened my mind to how wonderful this movement is of ours. And at the age of 16, I was very privileged to be able to attend a World Scout Jamboree. And that really had an impact on me. And I suppose my motivation today is to try and ensure that many more young people, like all of those participating in this jamboree, have opportunities that I was fortunate to have that have an impact on your life. So yeah, that's how I've come to where I am today, by sticking with the Scout program and coming through the other end of that, and wanting to see more young people have opportunities similar to those that I benefited from.
Okay, so David, I have two questions for you. Before becoming the Chief Operating Officer of the World Scout Bureau, what other positions have you held, and what inspired you to become such a higher position?
Well, thank you. And thank you for the invitation to be here today to celebrate this Global Cultural Jamboree. Before I start, let me also take the opportunity to send you the regards of Ahmed Al-Hindawi, the Secretary General of the World Organization of the Scout Movement. He would have loved to be here with us today, but unfortunately he's flying at the moment, and we've not found a way yet to, from a flight, bring people straight into the Global Cultural Jamboree. But you have all his regards, and he looks forward to connect with you at another time. My story in scouting started in Belgium. I joined the movement when I was 6 as a Cub Scout, and I went through the whole youth program there. Eventually became a local leader. From a local leader, started volunteering in the district and on the national level. And from there, I had the opportunity to actually be employed at the national office. There was a need for support on communications. And I started my journey there as a professional, supporting the Scout movement in Belgium. Eventually became their chief executive. And from there, I did a number of jobs at other international NGOs. But eventually I had the opportunity to start serving the movement at the World Scout Bureau. So that's what, it's basically a journey of serving scouting, strengthening my own skills through scouting, my professional skills through scouting. And eventually, this is where the scouting has brought me. So I would say, my aspiration of serving was always about serving the movement. And that's, which brought me to the role I currently do.
So Craig, you have completed 4 years of your tenure as the chairperson of the World Scout Committee. I'm sure you may have many unforgettable things happen during your tenure. Can you share some with us?
Wow, there's a lot to cover in 4 years. I'm not sure we've got time today to cover all of them, but as we come to the end of what was supposed to be a 3-year period and now a 4-year period, one of the things that I can't help but reflect on is how privileged I've been to work with such a capable team in the World Scout Committee, team of 27 people, diverse group of talented scouters from all around the world. To have the opportunity to work with them who've got the same passion, vision, and focus to develop and grow the movement, and to work hand in glove with colleagues in the World Scout Bureau like David has been an immense privilege. And I genuinely believe that we have come a long way in the last 4 years, building on some of the successes that we had in the previous 3 years. And if I look back, I think a lot of that is principally around the continued development and growth of the movement. Growing the movement is really, really important if we want to have an impact on some of the big issues facing both people and planet. With more young people equipped with the values and skills that the scouting program offers, the more chance we've got of being able to make a difference and lead the kind of change that the world needs. And I think we're now in a position where the movement all around the world and all 172 national scout organizations is in a really strong position to take the lead in the coming years on some of those big issues, particularly around sustainability, which is a hot topic for so many young people who are concerned about issues today and looking ahead into their future too.
So David, as the Chief Operating Officer, I believe you are having a busy life as you are carrying out your duties at the World Scout Bureau, KL office. Can you tell us what are the roles and responsibilities of the Chief Operating Officer at the World Scout Bureau?
Thank you. So what I do is I make sure that the World Scout Bureau delivers quality services to national scout organizations around the world. So we have 8 offices around the world, with the operational headquarters in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, where I am based. But basically, I try to make sure that the machinery runs and that when national scout organizations need support from World Scouting, that it comes as efficient and smooth as possible. And we're constantly also trying to innovate, like how can we do better? Like what are the needs we have? And particularly in these times, these have been moments where we had to rethink as World Scouting, like when we all go through the global pandemic around the world, like how do we adapt ourselves? How do we make sure that national scout organizations get additional financial support, get additional ideas of how you run scouting in an at-home context? And I think this Global Cultural Jamboree is an excellent example of how we can deliver scouting even in the most difficult of circumstances. But we also look like with the World Scout Bureau of how we support local communities, not only bringing young people together, but how, I mean, we've seen tremendous examples of how scouting rose up to the occasion as a movement for good, and seeing how in pandemic times, young people, young adults around the world helped their communities, helped with them being safe, understanding the dangers of the pandemic, supporting as volunteers the vaccination drive. So as a World Scout Bureau, we try to support that. And my daily job is to make sure that national scout organizations get the support they need as best as possible. Does that help?
Yeah, that's good. And Craig, COVID-19 pandemic has restricted the movements of scouts, their freedom and outdoor life. Of course, it was a challenging period for all of us. How do you see the scouting during COVID-19 pandemic in all 6 regions of the world?
Great question. And I think David has perhaps alluded to some of the experiences that we've had over the last 18 months in particular, where we've gone from many national scout organizations around the world trying to work out how they can make the best of the situation by looking at how they pivot and deliver program opportunities, a sense of continuity, if you like, to young people in their membership. And some have found that quite challenging because of issues like technology and connectivity. Others have found it a little more straightforward to do technically, but culturally challenging. And as David said, we are all about trying to provide support and service to National Scout organisations. And a lot of that over the last period has been trying to deliver events that can inspire and encourage people around the world, National Scout organisations, to go with the flow with this, because it's one of the means by which we can provide a sense of hope and optimism to our membership as well, by connecting like this. And as David has mentioned, this global cultural jamboree is a great illustration of what can be achieved with technology. We all know that we would love to be in Sri Lanka together in person to participate in an event like this. But short of being able to do that right now, these types of events make up for that. And I think they keep the spirit alive, and the hope and optimism that our better days are lying ahead, hopefully not too far in the future, when it will be possible to come together again in person. However, I think there is a fundamental change, which is that actually if we embrace digital, as we are doing, we have the potential to reach many more young people who today maybe don't know of Scouting. And so looking forward over the next years, maybe there will be more of an acceptance that this type of way of connecting actually has some added value that we should give some attention to and not ignore. So I think it's an exciting time. We've got to take some of the positives from the challenges that we've experienced.
Yeah. And David, we heard that the World Scout Bureau is getting ready for the 14th World Scout Youth Forum and the World Scout Conference. How is the preparation, and what are the news you would like to share with us from the World Scout Bureau Kerala office?
Yeah, so yes, we are gearing up for the 14th World Scout Youth Forum and the 42nd World Scout Conference in the second half of August. And particularly for all participants here, I would very much welcome you to watch our social media channels and go to scoutconference.org, because from 19th to 22nd of August, we'll be hosting the World Scout Youth Forum. And for the first time, normally you need to travel to get to that place, which is of course exciting. We would all like to travel, but that's unfortunately not possible now. And the good thing, the silver lining in this, is that the World Scout Youth Forum will be all around the world. You will be, through YouTube and through our live streaming, be able to join the event and see how young people get ready to participate in decision making of where this world movement should go, particularly reflecting on the impact the pandemic has had on young people around the world, and looking like, okay, how can Scouting respond in the coming year? So we're a month away now. I think almost exactly a month and 2 days. So it's getting really exciting. I mean, we're also learning a lot from initiatives around the world, like this one, of how we see how people engage with each other and taking that on board. But I mean, preparations are going well, and we definitely look forward to welcome as many young people as possible to take part. And if you want to be a part of the national delegation to the Youth Forum, please don't hesitate to contact your national headquarters, and they will explain to you how you can be part. But even if you're not part of the national delegation, you can join in via live stream on social media, on YouTube, and be part of the experience. So mark it in your agenda, like from 19th to the 22nd of August, the 14th World Scout Youth Forum will take place in your home if you want.
Yeah, I'm sure that will be an exciting event. So, Craig, was aware of all the activities done by the Sri Lanka Scout Association during the pandemic? Do you consider Sri Lanka Scout Association to be a successful NSO in the WASM?
Of course. I mean, we've been monitoring closely and engaging closely with all National Scout organisations over this period to better understand some of the challenges that they face and how they've been responding as well, so that we can share some of the best practices where we've seen National Scout organizations make that pivot to do things differently. And I've been privileged to observe from a distance some of the innovation which has been taking place in the Sri Lanka Scout Association. And as I mentioned at the opening ceremony, I think an event like this doesn't just happen. It's as a consequence of a large number of volunteers like yourself stepping up to play your part to deliver an event like this. So it's clear that within the Sri Lanka Scout Association, there are a lot of talented people who've had some vision around what could be done, and they've set about making it happen. And you should take great satisfaction, I think, that today you've got more than 20,000 Scouts participating in this global cultural jamboree, which I think is truly phenomenal and should give some encouragement to all of you in the Sri Lanka Scout Association that you can do this, and that if you've done it once, then why not think about doing this again, or equivalent or similar events to attract different people. Thinking back to that topic that I was mentioning a few moments ago about the growth of the movement, what more can we do using channels like this to reach out to young people that are maybe less familiar with this amazing program that we call Scouting?
Wow, thank you very much. And in fact, currently it's 22,000 participants at the GCJ.
Wow, well done.
And it is for you, Craig, again. So as the chairperson of the World Scout Committee, what advice would you like to give our youth participants to shape their lives through scouting?
Wow, that's a big question. I can't help but reflect that one of the wonderful aspects of this incredible movement is that we're both local and global at the same time. An incredible global movement of more than 57 million fellow brothers and sisters in scouting. And I suppose my encouragement to all 22,000 plus scouts who are participating in this global cultural jamboree is to remember that change starts at home. So in your scouting, look around at the issues that affect you, your family, your community, and the chances are that those issues affect other people too. And think about what you can do to tackle some of those challenges. It may be that there are other organizations locally that are working on those issues, whatever they happen to be. And we've seen that during the pandemic. So perhaps the key is sometimes to partner with those organizations to make change in your local community. Sometimes where there are no organizations taking the lead is for scouts to step up and step in and take the lead. I truly believe that when scouts see things that they believe to be wrong, that they roll up their sleeves to put things right. Again, we've seen that illustrated during the pandemic, but my encouragement is to remember that change starts at home. And if we all look around at the issues that affect us, then working together, we can deliver change on a huge scale globally around the world.
Okay, so once again, I invite all the youth participants joining us today via YouTube to put on your questions onto the chat, and we are ready to answer them.
Great.
So once again, I invite all the youth participants joining us today via YouTube to put on your questions onto the chat, and we are ready to answer them. So David, we may have one of the future chief operating officers of the WASM with us here in the audience today. So can you give a piece of advice to those guys who will be serving for the betterment of the WASM in the near future?
Yes, absolutely. And let me tell you that, yeah, I mean, I mean, if you want to grow and serve the movement, like there's no better place to start than in your local scout group. Become a patrol leader, become a local leader, support local scout groups. So there's, I mean, the scouting, the change that happens at the local level. Like the World Scout Bureau doesn't change the world. It's all those local scouts, all those local scout leaders who, by doing all these individual actions, make the change. So I highly recommend to start at the local level, and then, for example, through the Sri Lanka Scout Association, like see how you can further volunteer. We also have opportunities to volunteer even from your home for World Scouting. We'll be launching a new open call from the 1st of August to call for the volunteers from around the world to help us support national scout organizations around the world, but also think about the Scout method, think about how we help Scout organizations recover from the pandemic, how we do great digital activities like the Global Cultural Jamboree, but also how we organize big events like the World Scout Jamboree or the World Scout Moods in a post-pandemic world. Like how do we make sure participants are safe? We're looking for volunteers for that, and that's if you are. If you want to take a role on in World Scouting, I highly encourage you to volunteer. It doesn't cost you anything except your time. And yeah, you can. There's a lot of roles in which you can choose from based on your own competences and skills. And we're very. I mean, we definitely want that at least 40% of our volunteers are below the age of 30. So I particularly encourage all participants of the Global Cultural Jamboree, if you want to contribute, don't hesitate to volunteer for World Scouting. And yeah, we're a great team of, I mean, we have 150 staff, but we have thousands of volunteers around the world. It's a great team to join, and I'm very happy to be part of it. So looking forward to see you all joining our volunteer pools. And from there, there's countless opportunities.
Okay, so let's see what our young scouts in the audience want to ask from you too. Okay, we have one question. Will the 25th World Scout Jamboree happen in 2023 in Korea?
I'm happy to take that one. I'm privileged to be the liaison from the World Scout Committee to the 25th World Scout Jamboree in Korea in 2023. And all the planning is proceeding. Obviously, as David's highlighted, we need to think about the impact of the global pandemic on national scout organizations and their ability to form and mobilize their contingents. But all the planning is heading towards 2023. So we have some optimism around our ability to deliver the event. And I have to say that the Korean Scout Association are doing a fantastic job, not just in preparing the site, which is an important aspect in delivering an event like this and all the logistics, but also looking at the type of program that's needed to attract the participants who will be attending. So watch this space for more information, but it's full steam ahead with the planning and preparations for the 25th World Scout Jamboree.
Okay, and I think the next question is to you, Craig. Can you share your childhood Jamboree participations?
Yeah, I'll have to dig into my memory bank, but as I think I mentioned earlier, at the age of 16, I had the opportunity to attend the 17th World Scout Jamboree. So some of you will be able to work out how long ago that was. And that event took place in Korea. And I'd never really traveled before then. And traveling to Korea as one of my first trips abroad was really quite something, really formative for me. And I can remember the first morning waking up on the Jamboree site and unzipping the tent door. The sun was beaming in, and I could hear lots of laughter and chatter from all of the scout troops around our troop site. And you could see the flags from scouts from Norway and from Japan and from Korea and from Canada And I just thought, wow, this is absolutely incredible. And then to have 10 days of participating in activities with young people from around the world, similar to me, was really quite something. But at that event, I think for the first time, there was something called the Global Development Village, the GDV, which has become a key component of World Scout Jamborees since then. And I suppose that challenged me a little, because as a 16-year-old, I participated in some activities that were looking at big issues that affect people in planet that prior to attending the Jamboree, it didn't seem, it didn't make sense that Scouting wanted to associate itself with some of those issues. But it then became clear to me attending that Jamboree that actually Scouts are an incredible social force for good, given the numbers that we have and the reach that we have, being both global and local. And I suppose that event, like it's done for many participants at Jamborees, plants a seed in our heads around this truly remarkable global international movement that we're all part of. And I think it also encourages people to want to go further and do more, and to continue to want to connect people, break down barriers, bring people together in a spirit of friendship and solidarity. And that's an abiding memory for me, not just from Korea, but subsequent Jamborees, that the feeling at the end of an event like this, which is often difficult to describe, is, wouldn't the world be a better place if it could just be like a World Scout Jamboree? And then people go home and they try to make that happen, knowing that it's really, really difficult to achieve, but trying to make a difference in their local communities so that collectively the world is a better place.
Wow. And the next question from the audience is to David. What are the main events happened during World Scout Conference this time?
Yeah, well, the World Scout Conference will look forwards on what we need to do. It will decide on what we plan for the next 3 years. And one of the key things we'll decide on are the next world events. Like, we'll take a decision on where the next World Scout Jamboree after Korea will take place. We'll take a decision on the next World Scout Moot. That's like a jamboree, but for rovers from 18 to 26 years old. So there's quite a couple of decisions on events, but we're also looking at some policy for the organization, like looking at how do we make sure our national Scout organizations are safe and are being able to make sure young people are at all times safe from harm, for example, and how do we support national Scout organizations in that. We'll be also looking at sustainability and our role in protecting the planet as a world organization, and how do we make sure as an organization we step up to make sure that we are a climate neutral organization in all our events. How do we make sure they are sustainable, nature friendly, eco-friendly? How do we look into that? I mean, we organize jamborees, but of course we travel there. So how do we deal with that question? So a lot of like big topics, like we see a lot of impact of climate change around the world, and the World Scout Conference will consider like, okay, like how can we make sure Scouting as a youth movement worldwide can be a leading organization in making sure that we fight against climate change. Yeah, so that's, I think, some of the key topics coming up. We're looking at events, some policy, then I would say definitely sustainability. And of course, yeah, I think one of the big things the conference will look at as well is how do we make sure Scouting continues to grow? How do we make, and in particular, how do we grow to communities and young people who currently don't have access to Scouting? How do we make sure we become more diverse, more inclusive than we already are today? So that, I think, will be some of the big topics the conference will be looking at.
Okay, so the next question from the audience is to any one of you. Now we are going through COVID-19 pandemic. How Scouting is going to move forward with this challenge?
I'm happy to start. I think there's a growing realization that when we talk about a post-pandemic maybe that is a misnomer, that there's going to be a need for us all around the world to find a way to live with COVID-19, in the sense that it may be difficult to suppress it completely. And therefore, we have to track carefully what's happening nationally, regionally, and globally, and ensure that where it's safe to do so, that Scouting can return to a place where it can deliver program for young people in the way that it knows has maximum impact, which involves coming together physically to run daily, weekly, weekend programs and so forth. But given that the world is adapting and responding at different pace, there is also a need to think that as progress is made around the world, that we should not forget that there are some people in some countries who are unfortunately not as far forward. And so it's important for us to play a part in advocating for some equity around vaccination, for example, alongside continuing to do some really practical stuff like supporting NSOs who will continue to have to deliver aspects of their program virtually where they can, or to help them in looking at the rules that they need to update and adapt to keep young people and adult volunteers safe in physical settings with social distancing and so forth. So I think my takeaway is that we are still going to be impacted for a period of time. But I think whilst we could maybe look at that in a negative, pessimistic way, I think we can take a huge amount of comfort from the way in which the movement responded over the last 18 months with great creativity, innovative spirit, and a can-do attitude, which I think has helped Scouting to stand out in local communities as being an organization that in difficult times just gets on with it. And it gets on with it because we're prepared and we're all driven by the values that we hold dear. And over these last 18 months, when things like formal education for many young people has been really, really disrupted, that Scouting and its non-formal education has filled a really important space to bring young people together where they can laugh, where they can enjoy fun, friendship as well. So we need to take care as we look forward to the future.
Okay, so the next question is to David. We have noticed some NSOs are very keen to join virtual activities. However, there are connectivity challenges. What steps have you taken to overcome this for the 14th World Scout Youth Forum and the 14th World Scout Conference? 40 seconds.
Yes, I mean, that's a very good issue. Like, yeah, it's easy to say we're going to do a virtual World Scout Conference and a virtual youth forum, but we of course know that digital connectivity around the world is not the same. So what we are doing is we reached out to all national scout organizations around the world to ask them, like, so how do you plan to join? What's your bandwidth? Do you have a good internet connection? And when these NSOs, some NSOs told us, well, we're not in such a good place because the infrastructure is not great or it's expensive to get access. We worked with those NSOs to see how we can support them. So things we did is we provided them financial support, for example, to buy extra data on their phones for the event, or we helped them to secure a co-working space where there is a good internet bandwidth, or we worked with them and their government so that the government gave them access to a facility where the delegation can stay during the event, so they have government quality internet connectivity. Or we looked at business centers in hotels, or even with our partners. We have on some of the islands in the Pacific and in the Caribbean, we have some NSOs who will be joining from a UN facility to where they have a better bandwidth. So it's a mix of things. I mean, we first need to know of course. We reached out to all NSOs, and then we see with the NSOs, so what is the specific situation and how can we help you? Is that perfect? No. I mean, internet, like as you all know, like depending where you are, sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad, and sometimes there are really limits when there is no coverage, and then yeah, we just need to deal with that. But we're really trying hard to be creative, and that's what we are as scouts. Like, right? We do our best, and we try with creative things to make things work.
Okay, so the next question from the audience: how are other countries performing in international events during COVID? I think any one of you can answer for that.
Yeah, I mean, I think Sri Lanka is definitely one of the, when it comes to these big events, I mean, we saw the kitchen jamboree, if I remember well, a while ago. And then this event, I mean, you're definitely also in terms of quality of delivering one of the leading events. But I saw excellent things around the world. We saw beautiful things in Inter-America as well, in South America, where young people came together, in the Philippines as well. Also during the pandemic, we saw in Europe loads of activities on a weekly basis, like being organized. And again, it's like young people and their leaders being creative, like doing and make work with what we have, and thinking like, okay, so how do we do patrol work in a Zoom setting or online? And it's not always easy. We provided as World Scouting a lot of ideas. And if you go to services.scout.org and you click on youth program, you'll see there scouting from home and beyond. And there's hundreds of ideas we captured from around the world of how, what we saw as excellent ideas of how you can do scouting at home in a digital way. But I think what you are doing in Sri Lanka with this event, it's truly, it's world leading, I would say, definitely. And thank you to the Sri Lanka Scout Organization for taking the lead here and providing this opportunity for 22,000 young people from around the world.
Okay, and that brings us to the last question from the audience. What do you think about this jamboree? I think both of you can answer for that.
Outstanding. I think it's inspirational. I think, as David said, we've been collecting examples of good practice from around the world, and I think this event stands out for a couple of reasons. One of them is the scale and the reach that you've had, not just locally within Sri Lanka, but globally, and attracting lots of young people who are keen to have these opportunities to connect. The other reason why I think it's a success is that you're shining a light on a topic, culture, which we often take for granted at physical jamboree, where you've got the opportunity to really deepen your knowledge and understanding of different people in different cultures. By shining a light on it, and it's captured in the title of the event, I think is also really quite interesting, and it points to something I think that we just naturally find attractive as human beings, which is as inquisitive human beings, which is to deepen that knowledge and understanding of what it is that we think is different between people and where they happen to come from and their traditions and so on. Because I think we recognize that often by learning about different people in different cultures, we can learn something new about ourselves as well, which is important as part of our journey of personal self-development through scouting. So a great event, and it's been a real privilege to be part of it.
Wow. Thank you for your support, sir. And yeah, so that brings us to the end of the questions from the audience. And I would like to know that if there are anything for you to say additionally to the audience, to our young scouts who are joining today.
Yeah, I can take that one as well if you want. I think my closing remarks would be to seize the opportunity with an event like this to connect with other scouts from around the world opportunities like this, I think, will become more frequent, but seize the opportunity when it's there to make the most of it, and use that, I think, to recharge the batteries so that when hopefully things return to a greater sense of normality, that there'll be this appetite to want to continue to connect with Scouts from all around the world. I think as we've reflected through some of the answers that we've given to the great questions that we've had from the audience, one of the most remarkable things about this movement is how united we are. And I think that is because we have a shared set of values, a common promise that encourages us all to do our best and to make a difference. And yeah, my hope would be that we recharge our batteries and we think about how we can continue to connect post an event like this. And there are some great opportunities, I think, ahead to bring young people together virtually and physically, where we can further that cause that we've got of creating a better world, which is what, as Scouts, we all hold dear, close to our hearts.
So, David, that question goes to you as well. So, what's your final comment for our viewers?
Yeah, I mean, I would echo what Craig said. Like I mean, I would. We know that young people around the world have been disproportionately affected by the pandemic. I mean, we know like schools have been stopped, education, opportunities for early employment, social support. You know, if Scouting has to go digital, like for many young people, like what was their normal life and a key part of growing up has been severely disrupted, a generation disrupted. If you want, and I mean, we believe that young people are not only the most affected, but are also can be part of the solution of this. And we teamed up with our colleagues from other international youth movements, the Guides, the Red Cross, the YMCA, to actually give young people the opportunity to be the solution and to show the world that young people have it in them, like they are the generation of the future. They have it in them to provide the solutions of how the world gets out of this pandemic, of course, together with governments and with other generations. But we really believe that, I mean, while we are the most affected generation, young people should also take the lead in helping their local community and stepping out and going beyond this pandemic. And if you need any financial support for your solutions or ideas you have, what you can do locally, you can go to globalyouthmobilization.org, which is the website where we partner with all the youth movements around the world. And thanks to the World Health Organization, we have access to a $2 million funds to support local solutions. So I encourage you to have a look and to take the initiative. And sometimes you don't need money, that's fine. But if you need like some funding, we made together with our partners in the WHO and the United Nations funding available. So that would be my final message. Like, young people are the change makers and who will bring us beyond this pandemic. So it's up to us to join hands through the Scout movement, through all young people around the world to step beyond this pandemic.
Yeah. So that brings us to the end of the first episode of CatchUp and GCJ. And thank you very much, both of you, for joining us at the Global Cultural Jamboree. Thank you, Craig. Thank you, David. And stay tuned with us. We have our next episode with two other awesome personalities today in another hour's time. Until then, see you.
Thank you, Craig and David, for your time and joining us, and for the very important message shared with brother and sister Scouts from around the world.
Pleasure. Thank you too, Chairperson.
Thank you for the invite, Chairperson.
Thank you, David. Thank you, Craig. Take care. Stay safe.
You too.
Bye.